Minister, recently your party leader, the Taoiseach, claimed that the Social Democrats believe that Ireland is a failed state. It seems like he was literally just making stuff up and saying it on national radio. I've always acknowledged the country's many positives and successes, and I've consistently pointed out the profound sense of disconnect that many people have as a result of that. A disconnect between a GDP that makes us one of the richest countries in the world and nearly 4,500 children growing up in emergency accommodation. A disconnect between full employment and 500,000 adults living in their childhood bedrooms. A disconnect between a €24 billion surplus and nearly 600,000 people living in poverty. So no, we're not a failed state, but the government is failing far too many people. And that failure is not inevitable. It's not an accident either. It's a product of political choices that have been made at cabinet tables in this government and in previous governments. Political choices about what to spend money on and how much. Political choices that led to a 15% increase in the number of children experiencing deprivation last year alone. Political choices that led to disability services becoming threadbare and dysfunctional. Political choices that resulted in a failure to meet social and affordable housing targets every single year. Political choices that have set us up to fail when it comes to meeting our climate targets. This week's budget was also full of choices about what to prioritise and what issues were deemed not so important. Listening to you there for the last few minutes trying to defend the €9 million that was allocated to the school phone pouches. This was done because, fair enough, the Minister wants schools to ban phones, but she doesn't have the power to do that. So we can all agree on the need to prioritise mental health and children's mental health, but to prioritise phone pouches with regard to that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to most people. €9 million on a pet project that schools weren't crying out for. It's a lot of money and it could have done some real good. That €9 million could have been used to invest in special schools. There isn't a single special school, for example, in my own constituency in Cork South West. It could have been used to fund therapists in St Killian's Special School in Mayfield who were promised supports from Minister Rabbitte that never materialised. There have been no occupational therapists, speech and language therapists or behavioural therapists in that special school or any other since 2020 when you entered government. The Taoiseach said he disagreed with the decision that resulted in the therapists being removed from schools. Well, a Fianna Fáil minister holds that brief. The Fianna Fáil TD is the Disability Minister and you are the Finance Minister. What has been done about it? Nothing as far as I can see, while children with additional needs are repeatedly failed not by anonymous systems but by political choices. Minister, do you even at the very least accept that your government has failed these children with additional needs?
Thanks very much, Deputy, and acknowledge the difficulties that many families face when it comes to access to therapies, supports and assessments of needs in communities across our country, and that's something I see in my own constituency office, and I know all of us collectively share the priority in trying to advance progress when it comes to people with additional needs and disabilities. From an education perspective, you referenced Minister Foley and what she has sought to advance in Budget 2025. And there's an unprecedented €11.8 billion of investment in education and schools in Budget 2025. And the education budget contains €2.9 billion of funding for special education, which will make a difference for those with additional needs and support the provision of additional places and progress for many families and children. The provision of free school books to all students in the senior cycle makes a difference when it comes to the affordability of education across our school system. €75 million increase in capitation funding, which supports schools and communities across our country who need improved core budgets. over €100 million in additional funding for the school transport system, for example, and 1,600 more SNAs and 750 additional special education teachers. That makes a difference for pupils and students with additional needs, particularly in the special education area. And that's why we have sought to advance that in the context of Budget 2025. You referenced the investment when it comes to the mobile phone pouches. And as I've said to Deputy Doherty, this is about investing in wider in the support of mental health and well-being policy in schools. We have to give a practical outworking to this initiative, which parents have reflected concerns about this at second level for many years, and this enables schools by supporting them to actually implement such a policy. When it comes to the area of disabilities, Minister Rabbitte has been steadfast in securing a much greater disability budget, and if you look at the investment in disability since 2019, it's increased by 52%, and there's a clear commitment of this government to help support those with disabilities and their families. Not only are we speaking about the UN Convention of the Rights of People with Disabilities, but we are ensuring that the increase in spending is delivering real improvement in the lives of children with additional needs. And this year there's a record €3.2 billion of funding specifically in the disability area, and there's a focus on obviously assessments of need, therapies, and ensuring that we recruit the frontline staff who do make a difference. And I recognise that the wait times for many children with disabilities are too long in communities across our country, that they're not getting the level of intervention that they require. But the investment and the prioritisation for Minister Rabbitte will increase the number of frontline workers in the Children's Development Network teams, for example, and that will help through the budget that we've allocated.
The Taoiseach told disabled people that they would feel seen by this budget, and in your reply there you just said that we all share the feeling that it needs to be prioritised. I would ask you, Minister, if you genuinely think the children who are waiting and their families to access Children's Disability Network teams, do you think they feel prioritised or seen from this budget? Do you think that people who were hoping the motorised transport grant for disabled people that was axed over a decade ago might be reintroduced in this budget, do you think that they might feel seen? Do you think disabled people who are unemployed, disabled people in Ireland, that we have the lowest employment rates for disabled people in all of Europe, do you think those people feel seen in this budget? Was anything done for them? Do you think that disabled people who will get the one-off payment feel seen when you have a disability for 365 days of the year? Do you think that's an attempt from this government to prioritise disabled people and make them feel seen? Last year, when we got the budget announcement, first of all, we heard from Anne Rabbitte that there was an allocation of 195.1 million. Then the Minister for Finance at the time, Michael McGrath, said that it was 200 million. And then after Alva Keneally, the journalist, examined it a little bit more closely and got answers from the department, it turned out that it was actually only additional 64 million. So can you give me an exact figure of how much of the figure that you've highlighted there is actually additional funding this year, or will we have to leave it up to journalists to establish the reality of the allocation for disability this year?
Thanks, Deputy. And as I've said in my previous answer, this year's budget is a record of €3.2 billion, which is an increase of 11.6% on 2024. And that's been set out to me from the department involved. And what that will result in is further progress on a lot of the initiatives that have been established by Minister Rabbitte. So, for example, the waiting list initiative in the first half of this year, there's been improvement in the number of assessments of needs completed, which is a 28% increase on the same period of last year. Regional hubs have been established across the country and are operational. And there's strong oversight from Minister Rabbitte to ensure that there's delivery and much greater progress in terms of oversight with all of the various CHO teams right across the country. And through this budget, there will be further progress for people with disabilities this year and next year. We have a substantial cost of living package complemented with core social protection allocations from Minister Humphreys, which are very specifically focused on people with disabilities, their carers and their families. And this government wants to do more, particularly to support improvement in frontline interventions for those who have been waiting too long.